Good morning, everybody. Well, this is good morning for me because I'm at least 3 to 6 hours behind everybody in the US. I'm happy to say this is the first time that I have spoken all morning as somebody that likes to talk to themselves a lot. I feel pretty great to not have said a word. This video is going to be me doing my makeup, getting ready, and I'm going to be discussing a few things that you guys have asked in the comments section, discussing a few things I might have not elaborated on, and tell you guys where my ideas of beauty come from. I feel like I have a few videos on that, but I've never really told you what the philosophies are that kind of started my obsession with beauty, so I'm going to do that today, and I hope you guys enjoy it. As far as the books that I'm reading, I am at any given time in between probably 5 different books because I am a very erratic person. I jump from interests frequently, and it's hard for me to stick with one thing or be consistent, but I can mention a few of the books that I can recall as of right now. So the one that I just recently picked up was Women Who Run with the Wolves. And that's a pretty well-known book at this point. It's been around for a little bit. And it is one of the few books that have a Jungian take on the female archetypes. On femininity, I should say. Because the archetypes are Jungian. If you don't know who Carl Jung is, he's a very interesting bloke. He was an early friend and colleague of Freud. He was a psychoanalyst, but he was way, way less crazy and way less obsessed with the idea of sex and its relation to everything you do. He went on to discuss dreams in the same way that Freud did. He went on to discuss he's most famous for his archetypes. And one of the books that I hold very dear about sacred prostitution is a Jungian analysis of sacred prostitution. I actually have the red book by him, and it's fully illustrated. It's a manuscript. This big, big red book that my boyfriend got me for Christmas. It's probably one of the best gifts I've ever received. It's absolutely beautiful. However, I have just barely started this book, but I know that it's good, and it talks about the wild woman archetype. I have read maybe the first 10 pages, but that is one that I'm on, and I definitely recommend it just from what I've heard about it. It's good for all audiences. Another book that I've been reading is called The Secret of Scent, and it is a kind of perfumer's guide to perfume, where perfume comes from, but most importantly, why perfume or perfume molecules smell a certain way, where perfume got its start, what perfume is about, smell, if it's more of a discussion on intelligence, on relativism between people, if it's a discussion on sexuality and attraction. It's really cool. And I learned about a perfume by Serge Lutens called Nombre Noir, and it was his perfume, his debut perfume for Shiseido. The perfume is said to be the greatest perfume in the world, the greatest perfume ever created, and it's said to smell of roses. I believe a kind of musky rose, but the molecules that are used to create the perfume were known to be extremely delicate and sensitive to sunlight and the air. So anytime that you ever opened the perfume to use it, it was immediately deteriorating. So the first time you ever smell it is going to be the best time. And there's something, it's a very romantic, kind of like hyperbolic, mythical view of this perfume, which I find very interesting. And the author talks about Nombre Noir as one of his first memories of perfume and kind of what sent him into the obsession of perfume and why it smells the way that it does, because it's kind of like this mystery. Why does one molecule smell like broccoli and why does another one smell of lily of the valley, that kind of thing. And it goes into the chemistry of it, which is daunting. I'm just going to do my eyebrows really quick so I can concentrate, because I cannot talk and do these at the same time. It is important to know that I just recently discovered that flappers in the early 1920s used to use the soot from an extinguished match to do their eyebrows. And that just absolutely changed everything for me. I love that so much. So now I like to use a brush and kind of use the dust from a black eyeshadow to do my eyebrows. I think it's poetic. I think that's awesome. I wish all makeup was kind of like that, had that kind of that old world touch to it, like old archaic techniques for how to do makeup. They were so much more beautiful in theory. Another book that I'm reading is called The Beautiful and Damned, which is by Scott Fitzgerald. It is certainly my type of book. It is very lengthy. It is very wordy. There is a lot of, in my opinion, unnecessary build-up to the characters, but I like the idea of it. I like the decadence of the book. I certainly am a fan of his writing style and how floral it is and very dreamlike, very romantic. I very much am a romantic. I just really adore the way he writes. But the book is just kind of about decadence and about wealth and beauty and prioritizing living as an aesthete and leaving very little room for morality and seeing where that takes you, which is nowhere good, but it sure is fun while it lasts. But there's actually this really wonderful part of the book where beauty is personified, and beauty is in this kind of limbo state, and beauty is talking to the wind, which is, who thinks of that? That's just so wonderful. And the wind is talking to beauty and saying that beauty will be reintroduced into the world. And the wind is telling beauty what he, she, genderless beauty is going to look like, where in time they're going to be placed. And it's just this kind of limbo state, this conversation between two personified characters and kind of discussing what's going to happen, like why beauty is needed for that time period. And the time period, beauty is, I'm assuming, the woman that Anthony Patch falls in love with. And the wind says that for compensation of being the beauty for this time period, she will be paid in love. In addition to that, I am also reading Mastery by Robert Greene. I have mentioned his other book, The Art of Seduction, before, and I am now reading Mastery. I've read probably a quarter of it, and I love it because it reminds you the process of becoming an artist or becoming a master. A lot of the book is reminding you that it takes time. I think today everybody wants to be successful early. Everybody wants to be a genius when they're young. I personally have this complex that I want to achieve things when I'm very, very young to impress people. And it's nonsense. It's a romanticization. Can you tell that I am a romantic? Robert Greene is very, very well researched, and the book is giving case studies, examples of masters throughout history and how they started out, what they did to get to that level of expertise, what it takes. And all of these people come from different walks of life, different situations. Some people are born into money. Some people are poor. Some people have disabilities. And it's a very, very encouraging book on following your passion. And it's a wonderful reminder to just keep going and be persistent, and that persistence wins in the end. I've been reading Anais Nin on and off. I've read A Spy in the House of Love. I've read House of Incest, which is a prose poem. Wonderful. I love her writing too. She nourishes illusion, to use her own words, I guess I should say. Yeah, I read her on and off. I've been reading some of her diary entries. Her diary's interesting. It's very interesting, actually. But I like her fictional work better, even though that's not necessarily what she's famous for. So, on to sacred prostitution. Sacred prostitution is the act of worship of the love goddess. There are many of them. Sacred prostitution started out, I believe, in Sumeria. It is the act of having sex with men for money. However, it was done as a religious rite. It was not done in the way that we do it now. It was done as an act of devotion. And it was also a way for men and women to understand the mysteries of sex and the reconciliation. It wasn't just a little nothing that you just got out of your system. It was a very, very ritualistic, it was a ceremony. The act of sacred prostitution was a way to use sex and love and intimacy between people as a way to heal, to bring people together. It was a way for men and women to understand one another. But most importantly, I think with sacred prostitution, it was the temple women were trained to embody the goddess. And oftentimes it was said that the women who were having intercourse with these men, the men were having intercourse with the goddess. The women kind of became the goddess in this ritual. And the women, I think, is what interests me the most and inspires me for the videos on my channel the most, is because these women were exceptions to the very sexist views on women. Prostitutes were able to own land. A lot of these women were extremely, exceptionally intelligent. They were educated. They were able to work out. They made a lot of money. It was just something that it's something nobody ever really talks about, this kind of thing. And the fact that the church supported it at one point is mind-blowing. And it's actually said that members of nobility had relatives, their mothers were sacred prostitutes, Cleopatra being one of these people. It was said that her mother was a concubine and a member of the temple. So that's interesting. And I think another important point about sacred prostitution is that that the act of sex is not a disposable act. It is a healing act. It is a practice in vulnerability, in love, true love, the merging of two people spiritually, mentally, is what femininity is about, just as much as it is about chaos and things like that. Had to do this eyebrow off camera as I was getting very irritated. Yeah. Temple women were masters of the art of being feminine. They understood what their strengths were as women. They understood how to manipulate men in a good way, not necessarily a bad way. They understood the nature of the world, of the sexes, and they understood what it meant to be feminine through the training and through the ritual of in dedication to the love goddess or the fertility goddess. And I think it was like one of the last vestiges of how to teach women how to be powerful and how to use their innate strengths, how to realize them. I think it supported a healthier relationship between men and women. I am going to put on some mascara now. That is the Spark Notes version of sacred prostitution. So the last thing I want to do is kind of just talk about the things that fascinate me when it comes to beauty, what I find beautiful. So aside from what I've already told everybody about what fascinates me, which is femininity and ancient cultures, is I am obsessed with the femme fatale. I'm obsessed with the melancholic woman, the sad woman, the fallen woman specifically. I find a woman's rage or destructive acts from a woman to be far more interesting than when they're coming from men, because it's not in our nature to do things like that, right? But it absolutely is. This whole act of this idea of chaos, that femininity is chaos, and that that masculinity is order. That just the very idea of mother and father, mater and pater. Pater comes from pattern, and mater comes from matter. So pattern to matter. We are the substance, and the men kind of keep us into some kind of system and some kind of order or pattern, which we need. And the men need the matter. The men need the inspiration. The men, or masculinity, needs our chaos. We each have a purpose when the other is present. And we also have inspiration, and both give a certain level of control or release. So I find that just the very idea of the masculine and feminine to be very, very interesting. But as far as the fallen woman goes, there is a very, very clear link religiously to the fallen woman being Eve or Lilith, which was in certain Hebrew texts. Lilith was Adam's first wife, and she did not want to be subservient to him. And so Lilith is oftentimes portrayed as a demon who eats children. She's kind of like our worst qualities realized in a woman. Yeah, I find it, a lot of my ideas of beauty and things that inspire me are women that are dark, who have dark dispositions, women who are mysterious. I like this in men as well, but I think it's more interesting in women who are self-destructive. I just find it more interesting. I don't, because it's unusual, and darkness in people, there is really, at the end of the day, it is a stylistic choice, because it's something to find beautiful, but at the end of the day, there is nothing to fruit from that. And I kind of find this resistance to life, this existential dread, this asking, why am I here? Life has no meaning. I find that interesting in people, because there's so many reasons to be religious. There's so many reasons to believe in something. Speaking of dark, Crash is one of the books that I've been reading, and there's a part in the book talking about a woman who had flown through the windshield of a car, and the author called her a death-born Aphrodite, and I have death-born written on my tube of lipstick. So I'm just gonna give myself some rouge. I have a whole, as far as the fallen woman or the melancholic woman, I have a whole book, not a book, I have a few pages in one of my old journals about these different archetypes that I assigned different categories of melancholic women, based on their glances, their look. You have the vacant expression, you have the corrupted expression, or just depression. I have pictures from Tumblr that I would attribute to those different categories of melancholia and sadness and fallen women, because I was a freak about it. I was obsessed with it because I found it sexy. I found women who were dark and mysterious and self-destructive to be sexual. They were purely an art object, because they had no means to an end. Their means was destruction, and in that destruction, The only creation is art. It's your perception. And I'm an aesthete, so I excuse acts of destruction because they can be useful in a way that they are a cautionary tale, that they are a lesson, but they are more so the kind of the foundation for where art starts, which is a kind of amoral way of looking at things. That something doesn't necessarily have to have a purpose in order to be beautiful, in order to be worshipped, or to be recognized. And I think that's so true. Once you start putting function to things, or once you start attributing things as negative or politically incorrect or immoral, you lose so much. It's just true. I mean, like, the nature of art is just to be, to exist, not necessarily to not necessarily to be good, or to, you know, like, is Cardi B really your role model? The late editor of Italian Vogue was brought onto live television to discuss whether or not her shoot, her oil spill after the BP disaster, her oil spill shoot with Steven Meisel was moral, whether it was offensive. And she just sat there and just said, like, it just is. It's meant to just portray what's happening. It's not necessarily to be taken in any certain kind of way. And that's the highest art. That's the highest interpretation, is not taking anything too seriously, unless the work is specifically meant to be a cautionary tale, or if it's meant to teach a lesson. But a lot of art, it's not the artist's fault. Just like people who translated the Bible incorrectly, it's not anybody's fault that somebody misinterpreted a passage. It just is. Just like the universe is, just like nature is, art is. So I excuse danger and destruction and decadence, and it informs a lot of my aesthetic. Things that draw me, things that pull me, is that kind of, is decay and things that necessarily don't have a purpose. I can just sit and appreciate somebody that's beautiful. I can just sit and appreciate something that is beautiful, a work of art that is beautiful, without expecting anything more from it. And that it's just nature, it's just natural, it's just what comes from the human race, what comes from the mind. This video is obscenely long, but I couldn't really do it any other way. I hope you guys enjoyed me rambling and doing my eyebrows 3 times. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your friends about me. Leave a comment. Turn on the bell for notifications. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.